Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Nick Lee. Nick, welcome to the show. Welcome to Become Your Own Superhero. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. Looking forward to it.
I was channeling my Rick D's from Rick D and the Weekly Top 40.
You're doing a pretty good job.
I'm the son of a retired radio announcer, Nick, and I think it's coursing through my veins.
It feels like it, mate. You did a good job there.
Nick, have you ever had a career in radio or TV that we don't know about?
No, I haven't. I do quite a lot of media stuff just through my foundation work that I do. So, talk a lot on TV and radio, and quite enjoy it. It sort of started getting a bit nervous initially when I first started doing it, but I really enjoy it now. And the other thing too is it's a great way of getting our messages across. So any opportunity I've got to speak and get in front of an audience, it makes a difference.
Well, we'll give the audience a bit of context. So depending on which order you're listening to these podcasts, and I know that you're listening to them all because they're terrific, but Dr. Tom Nemi, Dr. Tom Nemi was on the show recently, and that's Nehmy. And you are one half of the Healthy Minds organization.
Exactly. Yep.
Let's quickly go through what that side of the business is again, just in case people haven't heard.
All right. So Tom is a pretty remarkable man. So if you haven't done so, I'd absolutely urge you to listen to his podcast. He developed the Healthy Minds program back in 2015 after doing a 4-year PhD study at Flinders University to develop a prevention program for mental health. So that's all about keeping healthy people healthy and enhancing their performance if they implement the skills that he developed and teaches. And coming out of that, he spent a lot of time delivering that program through schools. And my background's much more of a corporate background. So when I teamed up with Tom, I felt very strongly that he had a huge opportunity with Healthy Minds in corporates. And I had that background in corporates. And one of the initiatives I ran through the Jodi and Nick Foundation, which we'll talk in a bit more detail about shortly, was a workplace program. So I had a large network. I understood corporate health, and I came on board to co-design the corporate program of Healthy Minds and then get that out to as many corporates as we possibly can. So we've been doing that very successfully over the last 3.5 years. And the thing that Tom and I are most proud of is the feedback that we get from participants that go through our program. So I think we're sitting at above 98% of people who on our evaluation forms say that they would recommend the program to others. So very satisfying work. We know it's very important work, and we're pretty stoked about how it's growing and how many more people we're getting involved in the program, which is fabulous.
Well, I've seen one of the evaluation forms. There's just one box that just says, "Are we any good? Yes or no?"
Yeah, well, we get most people ticking the yes there, thankfully. So it's nice.
Well, it's a really great initiative, and it's a fairly new concept in the way that Tom explained it to me in terms of this preventative mental health or preventative. It's like preventative mental health is a great way to describe it, and it's a novel idea. It's something that I hadn't really come across, certainly in that form. So, absolutely, amazing stuff.
Yeah, well, he really, through that 4-year PhD, developed the world's first prevention program, so preventative effect for anxiety and depression. So that was published in a global peer-reviewed journal in 2015 as the first of its kind, and we haven't seen too many others that have the same depth of evidence base as Healthy Minds. So, as I said, really important information, and not enough people know about it. If you talk to someone about running a marathon, they kind of, even if they can or can't, they could probably give you a fair idea about how they might go about doing it. But with mental health, it's a different story. So yeah, it's skills that everybody needs to know, and we need to get out there to more people and help them.
Well, as fantastic as Healthy Mind is as an organisation, the work you're doing there, it's not the main reason why we brought you onto the show. And the reason that we brought you onto the show, I'll just preface with a warning that this next section contains death and poo in no particular order. And we were very fortunate enough to have Stephanie Bansamer Brown come on the show recently. Totally unrelated, long before we'd even crossed paths. And she shared her amazing story of bowel cancer recovery. And that's kind of why you're here, Nick. You able to elaborate a little bit further?
Yeah, so that was actually my foray really into health, because prior to that, I was going back over 10 years ago, I was a director at Unilever, so the big sort of consumer goods company that makes Rexona and shampoo and Dove and food products and Streets ice cream, all those sorts of brands. And I was living in Vietnam with my family. So I had my son, Jack, was 4 when we moved, and Bella was 2. And my wife, Jodi, was a special needs teacher. So she was teaching autistic kids at the international school in Ho Chi Minh, where we were based. And we were 2.5 years into a 3-year contract. In fact, I just extended to 4 years when it was a Thursday night. I was in Hanoi with my team up there, and Jodi rang me saying she had some abdominal pain and she didn't really know what it was. And at that point in time, she was 39 years old. She was very fit and healthy. She didn't have any family history. So, and look, bowel cancer wasn't even on my radar. I thought it was an older man's disease. So I wasn't too concerned at the time, but suggested that she go off to the GP the next day, which she did. And the GP very quickly recognised that Jodi had a block, so she ordered these scans that the results came back at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And at 11 p.m. that same night, I was away with my team. An ambulance turns up at our house and kids are fast asleep, and Jodi is taken to Ho Chi Minh Airport, where she's airlifted at low level to Bangkok for emergency surgery. Wow. And the reason they flew her at low level was because the tumour had almost entirely blocked her bowel, and they were worried if they flew her at normal altitude that she might burst her bowel. And that is, one of the issues with bowel cancer. Often it doesn't throw up those early warning signs that you might get with other diseases. They call it the silent killer for that reason. Made my way as quickly as I could to be with Jodi for the surgery in Bangkok, and that went really well. They removed a piece of Jodi's colon about that long to get rid of the tumour, but 3 days after that, a specialist came to see us and sat us down. It's quite bizarre, actually, because Bumrungrad Hospital in Bangkok's this massive public hospital, and right at the main reception area where people were coming backwards and forwards and asking different questions, this guy sits down at a terminal and starts going through Jodi's prognosis. And very quickly into the conversation, Jodi started to feel a bit faint and decided to go up to her room. So I'm left there, and a lot of medical speak before I asked the question, well, what does all that mean? And he said that the cancer had spread to her lymph and her liver. It was stage 4 bowel cancer, and at best she had 2 years to live. Jesus. So you can imagine going from being on top of the world a few short days before that to receiving that news just hit me like a sledgehammer. And I'll never forget going up to Jodi's room and sticking my hand on the door handle and thinking, what the hell am I going to say to her? How do you tell someone you love that at best they've got 2 years to live? And I waited outside that room for what felt like an hour. It was probably only a few minutes. Walked into the room, decided that sharing the news around time frame wasn't going to be particularly helpful, but said that we needed to get back to Australia where both of our families lived to commence treatment, which we did. And that period of time was really horrific, actually. Jodi was in a lot of pain. She had 3 major abdominal operations. She had multiple rounds of chemo. She did a treatment called radiospheres. We tried Chinese medicine, tried absolutely everything, and realized in August 2009 that we'd pretty much run out of treatment options. So we did what I hope will be the hardest thing that I ever have to do in my life, and that was to sit my 2 young kids down and tell them that their mum was going to die. And we didn't want to scare them at the time, and we thought that Jodi had about 12 months to live, but we wanted to give them an opportunity to talk to us about what was on their mind. And I think to this day, I think that was the right decision to make, but unfortunately, Jodi didn't survive 12 months. Shortly after that conversation in January 2010, she passed away from the bowel cancer. And I'd had a reasonable amount of success with fundraising with the Cancer Council. I think I'd raised over $200,000 for the Cancer Council prior to Jodi dying. But I just had this overwhelming sense of wanting to do whatever I could to ensure that no one else went through what we went through as a family. And of course, that's, shared by your family and friends. So that was really the key motivation for setting up the Jodi Foundation back in August 2010, shortly after Jodi passed away. And without having a medical background and being able to contribute to coming up with a cure, I just felt like if I could educate as many people as I possibly could to protect themselves against this preventable disease, we had an opportunity to make a difference. So bowel cancer, second biggest cancer killer in this country. We have one of the highest incidents around the world, but it's 99% preventable if caught early. So all of the initiatives of the foundation are out trying to encourage people to protect themselves. And there's some simple steps you can take to protect yourself. And we are just unbelievably proud of the impact that we've had over that period of time, not only in saving Australian lives, but also encouraging people to make healthier lifestyle and diet choices through our events and our education around diet. And equally, supporting families who have been impacted and providing them a vehicle for being able to express that grief or place their energy into something that's really positive. So, yeah, it's something, as I mentioned, I'm super proud of and love doing. I just get so much of a kick out of helping people in that way.
Well, Nick, it's hard at times to try and figure out a really professional way to try and respond to a story like that. Because although it was 10 years ago, it affects me and I don't even know Jodi Lee. And I'm curious to know whether you telling that story gets any easier every time you tell it or harder.
I think it has. I certainly know it's been therapeutic for me to be able to tell that story in a way that, regardless of how many people are in a room, it could be 5 or it could be 500. I always go in thinking that there could just be one person that acts on something that I say and that saves them. So it kind of makes it easier in that respect, but emotionally I haven't found a way to protect myself from going back into that story and really getting emotionally charged by it. And I never know from one time to the next which part of it is going to make me choke up. Typically telling the kids is one of those spots where I often struggle to get through it, but and certainly take myself back there. But yeah, I think it's important. And I think in terms of encouraging people to act on the messages, having an emotional story and being able to engage with people, not just their head, but their heart as well, is an important piece in convincing them to act.
Well, I think it is fantastic, Nick. And one of the things I want to explore because the concept of the show is becoming your own superhero, becoming someone that people look up to as a superhero. And your kids must be 12 and 14 now, or pretty close to it.
Well, so this was 10 years ago. They were 4 and 6 when we moved, 6 and 8 when Jodi passed away, okay. And now 19 and 16.
So I want to explore. So for people listening, that it doesn't have to be a terminal a cancer diagnosis or anything. I'm curious to know what lessons you learned about delivering those messages to your kids in a way that can help other people deliver troubling messages or messages of similar sort of punch, if you get what I mean?
Yeah, well, I actually think for both Jodi and I, it was a big relief to talk to the kids about it, because kids are amazingly resilient. And I guess we'd been very much aligned on the approach of let's be honest without being brutal. So as I said before, you don't want to scare them, but you don't want them second guessing you as to whether you're being honest up front and open with them. So we'd always taken that view, that sort of parenting approach right the way through. So it kind of felt like the right thing to do when we came to talk about how we would tell them and if we would tell them. And as I said, I still think it was the right thing to do. And actually, it was more helpful for us, to be honest, than I think it was for the kids at the time, because kids are kids and they, bounce back from that news. And I think when we told them, they were more responding to the emotions that we were displaying in telling them, as opposed to kind of receiving that news. And you wonder at that age, 6 and 8, how much they're actually taking in and understanding about death. And that's why we wanted to put a period of time between when we knew, and at that point we knew Jodi was going to die, we just didn't know when. And by putting that bit of time in between, we really allowed ourselves the time to talk to the kids about various things and explore stuff with them and perhaps scratch a little bit under the surface for them, just to see that they were going to be okay, as much as you can be okay when you lose your mother at that age. So I think it was absolutely the right thing to do. And we'd sought out a fair bit of professional advice around that as well. It's not everybody, and I certainly wasn't at the time either, that is well skilled in that kind of psychological aspects and how to deal with young kids and adolescents with news of that magnitude. So I think that's another piece of advice. So, I'd be transparent as you possibly can, be open as you possibly can without being brutal, but seek advice as well. So our approach was very much shaped around the professional advice that we had sought leading in, and the lead up to it was much worse than the sort of the delivery and the post, because we were very, very anxious in the lead up to telling them. And then once we told them, we felt a lot better. We were down at Victor Harbour, which is a beach house town or beach town in South Australia, and we told the kids, and we took them for a walk afterwards, and within half an hour of breaking that news to them, they're talking about are we going to see a whale today, or do you think that boat's going to come in and dock, or things like that. So just sort of that really made us feel a lot better about the approach that we took and how we did it.
Well, I might have another story about Bumrud Grad Hospital that will help you remember it slightly more fondly with the current memory, because I lived in Bangkok when I was 20, and I ended up at that hospital and ended up getting surgery back in 2001. And
Right.
and I'm from New Zealand. I'd been to Australia, but I'd never been overseas. And I took this job as a 20-year-old and got this job working for a relocation company. And I played some tennis-side rugby on a weekend and thought I'd hurt my lower back, and I was in agonizing pain. And I went to Bumrud Grad Hospital, which is, for anyone who doesn't know about the hospital, it's probably the most famous Western hospital in Thailand, if not that the Southeast Asia. Very famous for its breast augmentation. You can get a lot of high-end dental work done there, that type of thing, in addition to the surgery that you're talking about. And I ended up with a pilonidal abscess in my lower back, Nick. And They gave me an epidural and operated on me and dug out this 2.5 inch deep by 2.5 inch across abscess that had developed in my back. And this is the next part's pretty funny. And I'm not trying to be crass here, but when I was lying in recovery, I was lying on my back, and 2 young Thai nurses, who I think were just interns in their first year maybe, one of them picked up my chart and had a look, and another one pulled back the sheet and gave herself a wee giggle and went, hey. and I'm a bit groggy, and I, been operated on, and I was like, what's she laughing at? And I pulled back the sheet, and it revealed a large erection, and I couldn't feel it because I had an epidural. And after further research, I found out that epidurals in men cause erections. Would you believe?
Right.
So,
which is information no one shared with you prior.
So, not that you can do anything with it because you can't feel it, but yeah, it's an amazing hospital and world class. And I even used to get McDonald's delivered to my room in those days when I was eating McDonald's. So, yeah, hopefully they can another memory that might make it a bit more fond for you.
Yeah, well, I had been back, of course, to get back there at one other time, which was a slightly happier occasion than the time I was there with Jodi. But you're right, it's a pretty famous hospital, and they do a lot of amazing work there.
And pretty hilariously named as well, Bum Run Grad.
Yes.
I did look up the meaning of it actually recently, but I can't remember. Anyway.
Yeah.
Many things happen in our lives, Nick. Are you a believer that everything happens for a particular reason?
You know what I am, and I actually think it helps get through what you've got. What the card that I was dealt with, losing my my wife, and I sometimes I feel a bit guilty about saying, actually, there's so many parts of my life that I absolutely wouldn't change, because I've found my purpose and calling as a result of what happened with Jodi, and there's so many ways that my life has been enriched as a result of that. But I would wind the clock back in a second and bring her back if I possibly could. But there's just so many parts of my life, and as a result, so many other people's lives that I've happily been able to impact in the way that I have through, the Bum and the Head, Healthy Minds and Jodi Lee Foundation, which are kind of, through research, they're finding more and more links between the two, which is interesting. But yeah, I definitely do believe that. And, I feel kind of grateful that I've been given an opportunity at a relatively young age in my career to be able to find that purpose, and then run as hard as I possibly can at it for the rest of the time that I can actually do that.
Well, you've got some pretty amazing brand ambassadors that you've had involved over the last few years. Can you do a bit of name dropping for us and let us know some of the main people that have been involved that we might have heard of?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I had a successful sort of corporate career, but if you'd asked me prior to setting up the foundation, would you develop relationships with some of these people, I would have said, oh, you're absolutely kidding. How possibly am I going to do that? But I think one of the things that I found with finding that strong sense of purpose was, I call it a moral authority. I don't know whether that's the right word for it or not, but it kind of gives you this protective force field. I'd be very happy to be accused of being too passionate, and so I would just sort of jump into things or try and go down paths that perhaps I would have been too nervous to go down in the past. I love that saying, actually, that pursue something so important in your life that even if you fail, people are better off you having tried.
Amen.
So that was a bit of a sense that I had. And so we, early on into the foundation, we were only 2 or 3 years old. We only had 3 people working for the foundation, and we got $2.5 million from the federal government to run Australia's first national awareness campaign. So I built these kind of relationships in Canberra that were really, really powerful. And it was Tanya Plibersek at the time, the health minister, who was very, very supportive. And she wasn't giving us that money based on the capability of the foundation, albeit we had some early runs on the board. She was so taken by the authentic approach that the foundation had to protecting people that she felt compelled that she had to help, and was so moved by the story. We have Ida Buttrose that came on as patron for the Jodi Lee Foundation as well. And I'd sort of met with her when she got me on the Studio 10 show many, many years ago. And then we approached her a couple of years back. She mentioned on the show that she lost her brother to bowel cancer. So I knew she was passionate about it. And so it was fabulous to have her on board. We felt like not enough of the campaign spoke to 50-year-olds, which is the first time when you should be taking the government test. And so we went to two people that we knew were turning 50 last year, Hugh Jackman and Shane Warne, to see if they would come on board and help us with a campaign. Hugh Jackman, his mother-in-law, had a cancer that he supported and didn't want to confuse people, but Shane Warne said, yep, I'm in. You just got to get a decent amount of money to create a big campaign. And we actually got a pledge from the Labor Party before they lost the election of $10 million to get put behind that campaign. We've worked a lot with the AFL. So some big names in the AFL. A lot of people obviously impacted by the disease, but John Longmire, Stephen Kernahan, some of our other sporting ambassadors, Isaac Heaney, Dane Beams, Oliver Florent, they've all been impacted by bowel cancer. And in fact, we've run our workplace program at many of the clubs as well. And we had one of the players at Carlton Football Club who was a charity partner of ours. Well, we were a charity partner of theirs, I should say. Who did the test as a result of co-presenting with me at an organisation and found a couple of polyps. There's a fit 27-year-old football player who did the simple screening test and they found polyps. So, it is happening in younger people, but not enough people when they turn 50 take that test. Less than 40%, or in fact, less than 30% when they turn 50 actually take that test. So most of them go into landfill, which is something we desperately need to change.
So I suppose, what are the things that your average Joe can take a bit more ownership on and be better at doing, in your opinion?
Well, our vision is to try and rid this country of this disease. And when you consider it is up to 99% preventable if you catch it early, I can actually see a time when that might be the case. But at the moment, far too many Australians are suffering at the hands of this disease. So with that vision of beating bowel cancer, we've used that word beat to try and help us educate people and for them to retain the message that we're sending out. So the B in beat is to be active and healthy. And that's a lot of the things that you and I know about, and many of your listeners know about, minimizing your alcohol content, not smoking, eating well, exercising, sleep, all those sorts of things help protect yourself, as well as eating less processed meats, which shows a link to bowel cancer. And one of the other ones I think we'll hear a lot more about too is sedentary lifestyles. Just move more. Biologically, we're designed to move. So get out there and move more. Make as many excuses as you can to move more during the day. The E is explore your family history. So about 20% of cases each year have a link to family history. I had absolutely no idea about my family history, not less Jodi's family history when she got diagnosed. So that's important to understand that. The A in beat is act on symptoms. The key symptoms is blood when you go to the toilet and do a poo. So keep an eye out for that, but often the blood is microscopic, so you need to do the test as well. But if you do see blood, get off and see your GP. Unexplained tiredness, bloating, which is what caused Jodi and that abdominal pain, to get off and see the GP. Change in bowel habits is the other key symptom to watch out for. And then the final one, T in beat, is take the test. And there's very simple tests. As I mentioned, the government sends you a free one when you turn 50 and for every 2 years after that. And they're widely available from most pharmacies as well. A really simple test. Gone are the days where you have to poo into an ice cream container and take a chunk and send it off. It is really simple and takes you less time than making a cup of tea. So really important for people to do when they get that government test.
Yeah, great. And I want to make it clear as well, Nick, there's a lot of misinformation regarding diet at the moment that is being debunked by medical professionals, and in particular, the link between animal protein and bowel cancer. And there's certainly, you talk about the processed meat side of things will have an increase, but I think if people lump that with good quality animal protein into the same container, it's a very dangerous thing, because the main cause, what they are understanding at the moment, of most chronic illness, which includes cancer, is inflammation. Inflammation caused by environment, diet, stress, or any combination of those. And in my own health journey, and I'm not saying that, my lifestyle of being a carnivore is, the be all and end all. No, I had to eliminate plants to heal a gut autoimmune issue. But certainly with good quality animal proteins, really important in terms of, you eliminate the extra carbohydrate you need to have when you're eating a lot of fat and protein and that. So really important for people to take responsibility for their own lives, I suppose is what I'm saying, Nick, that you do your own digging. You don't take what the World Health Organization says as gospel, or what the pharmaceutical organizations say as gospel, because they have been proven time and time again that they make mistakes. And I don't think anything's deliberate. I think this is just people doing the best they can with the tools available. But it's up to us to self-educate and take into our own hands, which ties into with this being your own superhero. And I think the most important thing that you're doing, it's so great, is that you're just kickstarting that awareness of people like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't drink 2-3 glasses of wine 6 nights a week. And maybe I shouldn't, chase away that hangover with a McMuffin and, 3 hash browns for breakfast, that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
Mate, I'm a big believer of that. And I think it's really, really important that you know your own body and how your body reacts to certain foods. I mean, I went through a period of time where I was trying to drop some weight, and I was eating quite a lot of protein, and I was dropping the weight, but it was clear that I was having too many eggs, and my body was reacting to that. So I just kind of eased off the eggs a little bit. I still eat eggs and I still love eggs, but that was a signal to me that I'd overdone it a little bit.
Yeah.
But also through doing and trialing different things. And I guess, part of the foundation's events is doing long bike rides. I've done 8 marathons. I've done 5 Three Peaks rides in Victoria, which is 240 kilometers and 4,500 meters of climbing. And so in preparation for doing the best I possibly could in those events, I would explore a few different things. And I think as a result of that, I now understand how my body performs and what works best for me. And you're right, I've sort of followed a few different diets which were medically backed over time. And I feel like as I've matured and tried a lot of those different things, I've found that right balance for me. And, I know what I have to do. So if I put on a few kilos, for example, I know what I have to do to drop those kilos. I know what foods make me feel the best and foods that make me feel tired and lethargic. So yeah, I absolutely endorse that. And I think one of the things that we've had to do, and we do as a foundation, is be very much medically based in the recommendations that we do give. But I feel like human history has a lot it can tell us in that, in terms of, I'm a big fan of having that balanced diet across the food groups, fan of eating things that are in season at the time, because they're in season for a reason, and a big fan of not eating things that are overly processed. So yeah, I very much endorse what you're saying.
And 8 marathons is a great effort. How old were you when you knocked off your first one?
was actually working in London at the time and with Unilever, and it was called the Flora London Marathon.
As in the
So it was one of
margarine, the margarine company.
yeah, it was.
Don't eat margarine, people. It's terrible.
It was one of the Unilever brands, and so I thought, geez, I'm over here living in London. It's sponsored by the Unilever themselves, and so I got involved, and that was my first marathon. That was back in 2001, and then just got bitten by the bug. I did it the following year, and then obviously six times subsequently. So I've done Gold Coast, I've done New York, Sydney, and London.
Wow, that's brilliant. Any ultras yet?
No. You know what? And I'm a cyclist as well. I find it difficult to get all that enthused about swimming, albeit I know how good it would be for me to do that. But the cycling and running is good. But having said that, I was told in 2012 when I was over for the New York Marathon, after I came back, I got some scans on my hips, and they said you shouldn't be running anymore. So that's when I went a bit cold turkey on the running and jumped on the bike, which has been really good.
Well, you're a machine on the bike by the looks of things. And given what's happening in the world at the moment, what's the next major event that you're signed up for, if any?
Well, it's actually not this weekend, in next weekend. So in South Australia, we've got a trek coming up, which is an 80-kilometre event over 2 days across some sort of semi-tough terrain. So it's a hike. Some people run it. I'll probably run a little bit just to get some blood flow through my legs. But it's an outstanding event, and we like to do things at the foundation that really do challenge people, because the advantage of that is people have to dig deep, and I guess part of them digging deep is getting them an understanding of why they're doing it and why it's important, and thinking a little bit about those who have suffered at the hands of this disease. But also, very few people can actually do this event without training for it. So you're actually getting people into, hopefully, a sustainable behavior of exercising. And, people have a lot of fun with it. They get their mates around, they get their girlfriends. There's a high percentage of girls that do the trek. And yeah, they have an absolute ball. They challenge themselves. It's a really good experience. They're supporting a great cause, and they're doing it in the countryside, in this stunning countryside. So many elements of that, from a well-being perspective, that is important. But we've struggled like any other not-for-profit. We've had to cancel our Victorian trek, which was coming up in September, and we've cancelled the New York Marathon. We normally take a team over there. I'll be surprised if they still run Three Peaks next year in March in Victoria. So a lot of our kind of awareness and fundraising events have been stripped from us. So we'll come out the other side, but it's a tough time for not-for-profit. So we're kind of feeling for all those businesses out there that are really struggling.
Yeah, well, this next question's a hypothetical, Nick, but it's a curly one at the same time, and it ties in sort of with what you're saying. In one of the other interviews I had with Professor Tim Noakes, who wrote the book, The Law of Running, which is the marathon and ultramarathon Bible. He's a massive proponent of low carb diets and a huge health advocate in terms of being able to reverse metabolic syndrome, a lot of type 2 diabetes. Works very closely with Dr. James Mukey as well, the eye surgeon, Australian of the Year this year. But my question is, like you, I want to contribute to this whole getting people healthy scenario. I'm not a doctor. I don't have any formal qualifications. So I was thinking to myself, how can I go about this? So I've decided I'm going to become Prime Minister. And let's assume that I'm elected Prime Minister. Give me 3 or 4 or 5 years. And I appoint you any role within government that you like. So anything from the Deputy Prime Minister down, what role would it be and what would you do with that role?
It'd be, I'd like to, can I wear two portfolio hats? I'd like to be
Yeah.
the minister of purpose, and I'd like to be the minister for behaviour change. The minister of purpose is as a direct result of me finding my own purpose and how much that has enriched me in my life. And, you know, you don't, the shame is that I had to lose my wife to find that. You know, you hear so many stories. I'm sure you've had many people on your show that have found their purpose through tragedy. And it's a shame that people, and myself included, and clearly yourself, have to or go through that or endure that to find their purpose. So it'd be finding a way of helping people get to their purpose through the experience that I had and have had. And the Minister for Behavioural Change, I am so frustrated by the fact that so many people are dying of bowel cancer unnecessarily. And, you know, I outline those 4 simple steps, right? And Australians are typically a very, very smart race. We should intuitively and inherently get that, and it's fairly simple things to do, but so many people don't do it. And so it would be, you know, using the expertise that I have, and probably more so now through Healthy Minds, and understanding some of those psychological aspects that impact behaviour and cause people to act, that I'd love to kind of be out there preaching that to the masses and getting people to improve their lives by acting, not just understanding.
What a phenomenal response. And just for the audience at home, unless I'm ill-informed, those 2 roles don't exist in the current political environment. Am I right?
Correct.
So
yeah,
this, and it may sound like I'm half joking about this political career, Nick, but in all seriousness, it's something that's starting to really drill in the back of my mind about how I can affect the most amount of impact. And a lot of the things that we were discussing earlier with regards to nutrition and the dietary guidelines, and a lot of these other things which directly impact our health and well-being in this country and around the world, can be chopped off at the knee, I think, with some really strategic, clever political influence. And it's not about trying to get people to, you know, waggle your finger and do this. It's about cutting through a lot of the bureaucracy. And the thing that I love about a potential career as Prime Minister, Nick, is that I am unashamed in sharing all of my demons. And I think the superpower that you have if you go into the political arena with all of your skeletons out of the closet, then no one can hold anything against you. And if you are of sound mind, I don't drink or do drugs anymore, I'm not a gambler anymore. Like, if you take a lot of those things that get a lot of the other politicians into trouble, then you are far more likely to have a successful political career. And if you're able to be so authentic, like you are in the role that you have with the foundation and with Tom, you've seen the power of that vulnerability and how engaging it makes you as an individual. And these are the things that I think about and becoming really passionate about. So watch this space is all I'm saying. And if I make
mate,
it,
I love it. I love it. Well, when you get there, not if you get there, have a think about those 2 portfolios and let's have a chat. Yeah, I think that that lived experience that you've got, and that it brings a sort of an authenticity, and clearly your passion is born out of that, and want to become a superhero and do good. And I think with that at your core, and if you get that sort of through that kind of moral authority that I talked about, you know, you've got a real ability to break through some of that bureaucracy that I think inhibits our country and our politicians doing what's best for the countries and the individuals within it. So, mate, go for it. And, you know, I'd be the last one to say that you couldn't do it, because, you know, as I mentioned to you before, if you'd said to me 10 years ago, you're going to achieve these sorts of things, I would have said you're you're bonkers. But now I wouldn't say that anymore.
Well, I really do appreciate the encouragement, Nick. And I think it comes from many years ago when I was a partier, that I always wanted to continue the party on. I always wanted to make it last longer. And now what's happened is, now I've had an opportunity to feel as good as I feel now that I've gotten rid of a lot of those negative contributions in my life. I want to be able to share that feeling of excitement and energy and drive that have come out of this whole experience. Because if people knew how good they can feel when they start taking their life in their own hands, the world would be a really different place, in my opinion. It's quite a utopian thought, but I think it gives you something to aim for. And so for that, yeah, I'm pretty excited about the whole thing.
Mate, I reckon, you're going to be dangerous if you've got a goal and you're prepared to chase it. Look out.
When's the next election?
It might be coming up too quick for you, but following one you're in for sure.
Well, I've got to renounce my New Zealand citizenship as well. I might have to do a bit of a Barnaby Joyce on that one, but anyway, we'll save that for another podcast. Nick, before we wrap things up, are there any final parting words that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I'd love people to protect themselves in the way that I talked about before, those 4 key things, because as I mentioned, it's a preventable disease. Anytime I get any sort of audience, I'm very passionate about trying to educate them to do that. And then, this idea around finding your own purpose, and I started up a foundation to try and educate people about bowel cancer. And now I'm doing that and mental health. It doesn't have to be those types of things. It might be, supporting someone in your family or one of your friends that needs help. It's just making a decision about what that might be, and you've got to make sure that you love it and it energizes you as well. I just don't think it's sustainable otherwise. I mean, I get such a kick out of the ability to help people, and I think that's probably at the core of a lot of people's purpose. And once they find that, and if they feel like they can contribute to society in that way and people in that way, it's so compelling, so enriching, and such a sustainable approach to life, in my view. And I know from research and through Healthy Minds, is very protective. There's a lot of research coming through now that says if we have a well-being wheel that Tom would have talked to you about when he did his podcast. One of the elements of that is around purpose, and lots of research now pointing to that being the single biggest element in improving people's well-being and making them live a longer life. So,
amen.
Yeah, act, do, is what I would be saying around some of those messages.
The foundation, since its inception, I think this might be some old data, has raised in excess of $12 million. How are those numbers looking? Are we pretty close?
Yeah, you're pretty much spot on. You've done your research, mate. That's the amount we have raised over that period of time. So I feel like there's an opportunity. Obviously, it's a struggle at the moment, but I feel like there's an opportunity to expand that. But even with that amount of money over that period of time, we've made a really important difference. So we've just employed a new general manager into the foundation. I'm pretty excited about where we're going to take it in the future.
Fantastic. And if people want to find out more about the foundation, Nick, how can they find out about it?
Yeah, we would love people to educate themselves through our website, but also jump on our events section and have a look at some of the events that we have got coming up. As I said, we've had to, or we've been forced to cancel a couple of them, but we'd love your listeners to get involved in the foundation. It's such a healthy, rewarding thing to do. You can jump on our website, Jodi Foundation, Jodi being spelled JODI, Foundation. .org.au and have a look and see what we're doing. The other page I love on our website is our stories page. So jump on there and you'll get a pretty quick indication of the impact that the foundation has had, because it's people telling their own stories of how they've been saved as a result of the work that we do.
I have really, really genuinely enjoyed and just watched with absolute admiration, Nick, you share your story. I have gone through my fair share of challenges, but I haven't had to deal with the passing of anyone super duper close. And knock on wood, I won't have to for a little while longer. So I just totally admire your strength. And I think it's incredibly inspirational. I think you are the epitome of someone that has become their own superhero, and you should be really, really proud of the work that you've done so far. And, if the world had a few more people like you floating around, maybe it wouldn't be quite the place it is at times. So well done to you. It's been an absolute pleasure, Mr. Nick Lee.
Thanks, mate. I've loved it.